essentially, and looked at the statute 4553-1, which was essentially newly passed at the time that we began to develop and begin to look at this property for purposes of repositioning and repurposing. And the property at that point was viewed as a multifamily development of 416 units, 52 buildings, and it was well, I wouldn't say fully engineered, but close to engineering. We've done a tremendous amount of site, call them boring tests, call them pit holes, if you will, but really focused in on the determination of two primary utilities, which is septic and water, and how we can accommodate the amount of density for septic and water. We had that addressed, and we came before the board at pre-application, I think back in September of 2024 or October of 2024. And obviously the board seemed a bit overwhelmed by that amount of units. So the developer went back to the drawing board to see if there was another proposal, something that we could look at that would be more, I don't want to say palatable, but something that is essentially, like I said at the beginning, a balance between what we initially proposed, which was a single family lots and cluster development that the council didn't like because of the density. And then the multifamily, which was really kind of something that the council said was essentially out of character with the town of Charlestown, given the amount of multifamily and the amount of development. So we've done our diligence and determined that a good balance, a good middle point is essentially what we're proposing this evening, which is 158 units, detached single family dwellings, age restricted. And what this does is it takes the thought of the cluster development, the single family dwellings, applies it here because you're going to have single family homes, and takes the multifamily facet of the 416 unit and applies it because it's really going to be a community. It's going to be a multi-family dwelling. It's just going to be detached. And then we took into consideration the issues with respect to economic impact of the town, school-age children, and decided that we would make this a age-restricted community, so 55 and over. So we've essentially have taken all of the information that the board provided to us at the two past pre-application meetings and combined them to form this proposal and this application. We believe from an engineering standpoint that the application is certainly feasible. We're at the pre-application section or pre-application phase of the development. And so this is the phase where we give you our conceptual plan. It's pre-application, so it's even more conceptual than master plan. It's really just a thought. Although because we've been working on this property for so long, we've gone beyond what would be normally conceptual and have a very good idea as to the engineering aspect of this property. And our goal is to get additional information from the board before we come back to it at preliminary plan. So as the board is aware that under the new statutory scheme for approval of a comprehensive permit, there are essentially two phases of review by the board. There's the preliminary phase and then there's the final phase. And at the preliminary stage, the applicant is not required to come before you with any state approvals, unlike a major land development project or major subdivision project where preliminary plan is usually addressed once the applicant has obtained all of the state approvals, which would be RIDOT and RIDM. In this process, in this proposal, which is under the comprehensive permit statute, this applicant can essentially forego, if you will, state approvals as far out as even issuance of the building permit. We're not going to wait that long. We will have, hopefully, if not by preliminary plan, certainly by final plan, RDM approval. And to address some of the comments that were had by your town planner, the proposal here is going to be for private roadways. We had always, from the beginning, even when we were doing the cluster development, proposed private roadways. So we will meet this essentially a private community and a private development. With respect to septic and water, the individual dwellings, the 158 units, will not be individually served by a septic, but rather they will be grouped. very similar to the proposal that we had with the 416 units, where we will have several buildings on a septic system. That septic system will be, various septic systems will be laid out throughout the parcel, and they'll accommodate a cluster of buildings, very similar to what we're proposing with the apartments. The septic systems are going to be located in the areas that we had already identified as suitable when we came in with the other projects. Because again, we have done a great deal of engineering as far as soil testing, as far as wetlands review, as far as drainage reviews and calculations. So we are confident as to where we believe we would be placing the septic systems. And that's the same with water. So that, and you'll see that significantly detailed, that preliminary plan. Obviously, the plan you have before you is, as Guy noted, is a concept plan, one that is more elevated than what you would normally see at pre-app, but not one that you would see a preliminary plan, because there's not as much detail to it as will be a preliminary plan. So after this evening, you won't see us back here until preliminary plan, because as you know, there is no master plan. So we really want to use, or I should say, this is an opportunity for you to really give us some insight and some direction with respect to the conceptual plan that you have, and then we'll be back at a preliminary plan. As part of the 158 units, 25% of 40 units will be affordable. So they meet the criteria of the state statute. We will demonstrate to the board at preliminary plan all of the elements necessary for the issuance of a comprehensive permit. So we will have with us at preliminary plan a traffic study for you to review. We will also have a expert testify as to the comprehensive plan to show that the project is consistent with the comp plan. We will also present we'll present an economic impact study to address two of the 6 prongs that are part of the state statute, which require you to review. And finally, we'll also have a fiscal impact study that will be presented as part of the project. Our goal is to meet each of the elements of the state statute. And as you know, that your review is a bit different than what you would normally review, as you're going to be subject to the criteria that is set forth in the state statute. And those are the elements which we need to, or which we have the burden to meet, and you have the obligation to review. So with that, I'll entertain any questions you have. Really not much else. I mean, I think the site, I think you're very familiar with the site. It's certainly not the first time we've been here, as you know, but it's a large site. It's a very big parcel, 80 acres. Of the 80 acres, approximately 63 some odd acres is land suitable for development. And we've presented a project narrative. That project narrative describes both the site, and it also gives the calculations as to how we have come up to the density that we proposed. We've also had this reviewed by Rhode Island Housing. We have a letter of eligibility. In fact, our letter of eligibility is for a number of units far greater than what we're proposing. So we've really scaled back a significant amount with respect to the units. And also, we have come below what would be permitted based upon our calculations of the density per Rhode Island general laws, which is specifically 4523.4. In 4523.4, that section of the statute really identifies what the density bonus is. We think this is a great compliment to the town. I mean, as you know, your town does not have this type of housing stock. The state has identified this town as a town that is short with respect to affordable housing. And so it's subject to a mandate. In these units, these 40 units will go towards that mandate, and will attempt to be a process or part of the process for the town in achieving its mandate of affordable housing. The price point on these units, we don't know as of yet, as the market seems to continue to fluctuate. But we think that the units will be very palatable, and they will certainly contribute to your housing stock as with respect to communities that are age restricted over 55. We have done similar developments in other parts of the state that are age restricted, 55 and over, that have been very, very successful. This is kind of a spin-off to some of the other developments we've done, where we've not done single family detached. But we think that given the area, given the style, your comprehensive plan, then these fit nicely in that, schematic and scheme, in that system. So with that, I'll take any questions that you may have to share.
So, I had a lot, but.
It's pre-application, so you're only allowed 2 or 3 questions.
Yes, but it's also,
It's on.
See the green.
yeah. If anyone else has questions, we can
Yeah.
alternate.
Yeah, sure. We'll start the topic and then.
So just a note about conservation development. This commission was very much in favor of conservation development, so you have misunderstood.
I must have completely
Yeah.
misread the
So,
directions.
yes, because we thought that,
We thought that the board did not like the density of the cluster development.
Oh, I-
It did not like what we were essentially proposing. Otherwise, we would have proceeded with that, and that was prior to the statute. And that's too bad that those signals were not properly sent, because that ship sailed.
I think,
And that would have been a good development.
I think from the point of view of what was proposed, the yield was, I think, 21 originally, and the owner was insisting that it be 23, and that is not the way it works. And also, we wanted to conserve, normally with conservation development, you look at a parcel and see where best to put the houses and where best to save certain things. And this was a forest that was part of a continuous forested area, and that was the way the houses were going to go, and the gravel pit was going to be the required open space, which wasn't really very functional, and that was where we had some disagreement. We were not against conservation development. We never got to explore conservation development, really. So I think, whether it was misunderstanding or not, we would have pursued a conservation development if it had been done fully with the 10-step process that we had, and that was not happening. So I just want to
And
clarify that.
the reduced number of lots, although it may have been 2 lots, changed the economics of it. Such that it didn't become viable. And then we went, once the comprehensive permit statute was enacted with the density bonus, then we looked at the higher density with the multifamily.
There was no chance for having extra conversation, I don't believe. Anyway, we're moving on.
and that was also in front of the technical review committee.
No, that was, well, I don't recall if that was TRC or if that was planning board.
That was
reapplication.
TRC.
Yeah, okay.
But, it's not true that we don't like conservation development. We fought very hard.
Well, I don't mean that you don't like conservation development. I mean, who doesn't like conservation development? It's like saying you don't like puppies, right? I'm not saying that. What I mean is that the conservation development proposal that we had proposed was not, we didn't get positive signals. And we had a robust discussion about the number of lots, which we had proposed 23 or 24 at the time. The board wanted to decrease them to 23, wanted to enlarge them, didn't like the location of the open space and how we were proposing the open space and the viability of that open space. And it frankly became non-economic. It became non-feasible from an economic standpoint at a later point. But now, if we were to do a comprehensive permit with single-family lots and propose a percentage, 25%, to be affordable, the amount of site work on that wouldn't play out. It wouldn't pencil out, if you will. So that's the switch to the multifamily and the density that is being proposed.
Actually, I thought that in your this application that you were embracing conservation development into this, and I appreciate that. And so I don't want to lose the fact that that is not going to be. And there are some things, we have a lot more to talk about. I'm sure Ruth can go right down. But my concern is when you eventually get to your application, it would be helpful to know what the open space was. And you're allowed to have a certain percentage to be active open space, 15%. And as you know, in the 60% is required for open space. Now, I don't know how that could work, but maybe it looked like you probably have that because you can include around the wells as far as, so you probably have that, but we would probably want to know that information. I'm also curious, these are going to be for sale, not rented?
Correct, for sale.
Okay. And is there a certain, I tried to figure out, when you talk about different septic systems, is there sort of a number where if are you gonna have 1 or 2 bedrooms?
They're gonna be all 2-bedroom units.
2-bedroom units, so you know approximately
Yeah.
how many people would
Yeah.
probably be there.
Yeah.
And if they're gonna be for sale, and they are the 20,000, I'm throwing a lot at them, I'm sorry, but, is there a possibility that at one time, after this is done, that somebody might want to put an ADU? Should we have calculations for what that would involve?
Yeah, and so as
Sometimes
you're
we have-
aware, yeah, that's a good question. And because you're aware that the state statute's been changed to allow ADU units as well.
Yeah,
And I think it's tough to keep up because every time you turn around, they
Mhm.
change them. So the last
exactly.
time I checked, they were permitted by right, or they cannot be prohibited by the town.
Yes,
So that does create a problem, because once you've built these units, someone who lives there and wants to do an ADU can reapply for one, but we're not gonna do ADUs.
you're
on
not
there.
gonna do
And our
ADUs,
density is premised
Right.
on.
and they would be responsible for maybe boosting their particular,
Yeah.
I don't know how they would
No,
work that.
and that's a very good point. Let me unpack that for you, because the density that we're proposing, the 158, is going to correlate to the bedroom count.
Yeah,
It's gonna be tied to the ISDS, which is your septic system.
okay,
And so, that means that the DEM is only gonna allow a certain amount of capacity. And that capacity is gonna be based on bedrooms and based on the number of units. So anyone who later down the path wants to add an ADU to their unit would probably have to get an amendment from the DEM on the septic for, capacity. And those septics are gonna be not owned by the individual units, but they're gonna be owned by the condominium association.
right,
Because those are common areas. So they're not even limited common areas. They're common areas under the control or under the umbrella of the condo association. So they would need the approval of the association to get an amendment on their ISDS approval, which would allow for the expansion of the individual units. So my guess to that is, it's unlikely that it's going to happen.
okay.
Well, can I ask then on the management of you say it's now to be a condominium association?
Yeah.
They pay condominium fees, and then they are responsible for maintaining all the septics and any other.
Yes,
Aspect.
it's like any other condominium
Right.
association. They're going to be,
Yep.
condominium
Yeah.
association has common areas which are shared in association with the unit owners.
How does the LMI units, I mean, do they have to pay the condo fees, or is that,
They're part of the condo association.
so you think that they would be able, I mean, these would be fairly hefty condo fees, I would have thought. If they, and the LMI, is that 80, 100, 120% that you're considering?
I don't know whether there be 80 or 120. That's going to be the range between, excuse me, that'll be the range between 80 and 120. They'll be monitored by a monitoring agent that's going to be designated either by Rhode Island Housing or through Rhode Island Housing. And the condo fees will be, consistent with an association like this, and they're not exempt from the condo fees. The only thing that they're exempt from is they're capped as to what they could sell for, and for a period of time.
Right.
That's going to be the exception. But you're not going to be able to distinguish the LMI unit from a regular unit.
No, but I'm just saying that being because it is a condo association, there are fees involved. And if one of the concerns we have with LMI housing is if it's not sold or if it's foreclosed upon, it gets lost frequently because the bank does not have to abide by that same regulations.
No, it's not going to get lost. I mean, look, an LMI unit is an LMI.
We've
unit.
lost
It'll
one.
always be an LMI unit.
No,
Oh, you've
we've lost
so
them.
they just
Yes.
disappear into thin air.
Well, they get booked.
They
Yeah.
become market rate. So banks are protected from the Affordable Housing Act. They're exempt. So if a bank takes over a unit, it
They
becomes a
don't
market.
have to sell it as an LMI.
They're not
Right.
They'll sell it for market rate.
So
So you
a
need some
concern.
kind of protection. The protection might be that this is, the,
But
you
that-
own the
that-
land.
You guys gotta go one at a time.
I'm sorry.
So if you own the land, that might protect it.
Well,
Not you, but
I
the,
don't,
the
I'm not
association.
familiar with the scenario you raised because it's inconsistent with the state statute and inconsistent with my understanding of the law. Because the way these units are deeded. So when you buy an LMI unit, in the deed, it is a restriction that runs with the land and runs with the four walls of what you buy. That says that this is a low and moderate income unit pursuant to Rhode Island General Laws 4553-1. And it's such until, the expiration date of 30 years or so forth. So that deed can't be you can foreclose, when you foreclose, you essentially, you eliminate anything that is behind you, any other mortgage or any other lien or any other incumbents. But the deed will always be ahead of any mortgage. So I don't know. It's a-
Banks somehow are exempt from this, and I don't know what law.
I haven't read that in the statute, but I'll take your word for it.
I don't think it is in that statute. It's somewhere else that's taking precedence over it. So,
All right, I don't.
Yeah.
So how,
In
sorry.
this instance, yeah, I don't know if that will happen here. I mean, I can't speak to it. What I can tell you is what I know, and that is how this development scheme or system is gonna be set up. And this will be a condominium association where the association owns the land and owns all the common
That's
areas
better.
and the limited common areas. The only thing you buy is essentially your floor, your four walls, anything and everything, and anything inside those walls and the roofs. And in some instances, in some condos, even the roof may be common and the exterior may be common. I don't know how we're gonna do that here, but and I'll have to go and look back at the other developments that we've done as to how we've handled the outside. And the thought behind that is we want continuity with respect to the maintenance of the outside, so that the exterior always maintains the level and the look that we want, and that is part of the development. So to answer your question, you can foreclose on the unit, but I don't think you're gonna be able to, in our development, you will not be able to eliminate
Just
the
what you
LMI restriction, because the land isn't yours. And there would be a right of first refusal on these units too, meaning that the association has the ability to buy it back from the bank who forecloses, or can step into the shoes of a borrower who's in default. And that's because as a condominium association, you don't want foreclosures in your association. So you try to mitigate that as much as possible.
so at some point we, like you, and we've asked this
Yeah.
for other comp permits,
Yeah, what we'll do is.
to set up how you're going to protect from
Yeah,
foreclosure.
And that's part of any preliminary plan submission. Usually by
Mm-hmm.
final plan, we will give you the legal documents. And so you'll have a draft of any easements, if there are any easements that are applicable, which I don't think in this instance would be, but if they are, we would provide that to you. We would provide you with a copy of the proposed deed that would be used to convey the unit, so you can see the restrictions. And then we would provide you with the condominium document, so you'd see the language of the condo doc.
I mean, we have before, are not 30 years, but 99 years as the limit. And in fact, the state in their recent housing thing has acknowledged that the 30-year is usually too short, and that, that's where you lose the LMIs. So I'm just saying that's usually what we've required. So when you're doing documents,
But I can tell you that whatever state law, whatever state law governs, the comprehensive permit process, we're gonna follow. So, and we'll follow it to a T, because that's really our burden.
So,
well,
I'd like to ask a
okay.
question. You mentioned the groups, septics. What about the wells? Are you,
Thing.
I'm sorry?
Same thing, they'll be grouped. There'll be a water system.
are you looking at the 3 public wells you've got here?
So by final, we'll know who goes where,
By
And-
preliminary.
Madam
by
Chair,
preliminary.
may I ask I want to clarify this point on the septic systems. Because I think that this represents a change from what was submitted in the narrative.
Mm-hmm.
The narrative says that each structure will benefit from and utilize its own septic system and leach field. So is that not the case anymore?
No, that's not, that, and I'll take blame for that. That's not properly, crafted. So when we designed the septic for the 416 units, they were garden size apartment buildings. And so the septic systems were designed for the units, which were the buildings.
I see.
And each building would have 20 units, 30 units, 40 units.
So this is a carryover from the comprehensive
Carryover
permit?
from, correct. So
Okay.
here, what we're doing is we're considering a cluster of buildings to be a segment. And that septic system is gonna handle that segment, which would consist of maybe 10 or 20 detached residential dwellings, which we would consider buildings. So again, think it's a little tricky because it's not a single family house. You're buying a house, but you're only buying a unit. The only difference is they're separate roofs as opposed to having one roof.
Okay.
So that's how that gets distinguished. And it's sometimes a bit more difficult to relay that in prose. So I think that was the error in that. But I'll clarify now for the record, so it's clear that at preliminary, you will see that the septic system will be handled, there will be one septic system that will handle a segment of units and so on and so forth throughout the development.
Okay, thank you. And while I have the microphone, I just want to clarify also with respect to the density and the number of units being calculated. The narrative uses a number of 15.55 acres that are not included in the suitable area calculation, leaving 64.33 acres. And I didn't see on the survey or on the site plan either of those numbers called out specifically. So I just wanted to understand how you were calculating those numbers so that going forward, when we get to the finer engineering stages, those numbers don't need to change.
Yeah. So we will, you'll see a plan, and essentially what you're familiar with is a yield plan.
Yeah.
So you'll see something similar to that will identify the land suitable for development and the land not suitable for development and what's been excluded and how. And so you'll get a separate plan for that. Now, one of the reasons why we haven't gone to print on that plan yet is, as you may know, the state statute is being considered now for a change, and they're going to change what you can consider to be land suitable for development and what. So, it used to be wetlands buffers and open space and other things were not part of your calculation for suitable land. That's under review and that's subject to change. That may change.
So was this calculated by the surveyor?
This is calculated by.
As it stands today, I mean.
I know,
John, that was done by the wetland survey.
Yeah. So this is calculated, it's calculated by the biologist who's prepared a wetlands delineation plan.
Does that include the roads?
That will include the roads, yeah.
So he included the roads in that.
Or he excluded
yet.
whatever he did.
Yeah.
He considered, put it this way, he considered the roads.
Okay.
They're probably excluded
Yeah.
in that calculation. But in the new statute, I think the roads, your solicitor can confirm it probably better than I do. But I think the roads are part of the calculation now, but they've tweaked that formula.
Right, so what it says now, before any changes, is land utilized in the density calculation shall include wetlands, wetland buffer, area devoted to infrastructure necessary for development, and easements or right-of-ways of record. I don't think they're taking out the right-of-ways of record. They may be taking out the buffers. Buffers, I can't remember which law it was, but they're taking buffers out again from something.
Right.
Area devoted to infrastructure necessary for development, does that include the public wells?
Yeah.
So you have to subtract the public wells.
Mhm.
All right. Do you have to subtract the group septic?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Yeah, but the public well, because those are easements
Yeah,
that,
that's
right, are, the right there.
But that's gonna, yeah, in this development, it's gonna be interesting because they're not gonna be, again, they're gonna be owned by the association. So I'm not sure that each unit owner is gonna have an easement to it. It's just gonna be part of the common area.
But you haven't currently subtracted the well
I don't believe so,
protection
no.
areas. It doesn't add up. I don't think you subtracted the right of ways either.
No.
But if the buffers come back, then you get more back. So just, did you have more?
Drainage infrastructure could be calculated in that as well. So I know that the density bonuses are going to be based off of the developable area. So I just want to make sure that we understand where that number is coming from and how it's being calculated and that it's accurate.
And also, after this meeting, so to reduce future misunderstandings, if we have any other, if we think of things, if we have any other comments, to get them to Sean. After hearing this, if we think of other things, and then he can share those with the applicant.
The way we've also set it on the narrative is helpful too, because we did two calculations, one for this development and one just based on the state statute, which is 3. So if you look at the land that we deem to be suitable, which is 64, you multiply that by what the state statute permits, the number comes out to 192 units. So we're 192.99. So it's 193 units. We're proposing 158 units. So there's there may be some sway there, but I don't think our number's going to change one way or the other, either up or down. I think that's where your number's going to be.
So going back to your narrative, just correcting things, it says the site is not in a national heritage area. It's actually would be called a natural heritage area. But the state's directed us to use the conservation opportunities and environmental resource maps rather than natural heritage. And from the conservation opportunities and environmental resource maps at DEM, this site is entirely, except where the excavation has happened, within an area of unfragmented forest of 500 acres or more. The entire site is in a climate corridor with confirmed habitat diversity, and meaning that it's important for wildlife to use to adjust to climate change. And the entire site is contributing to a cold water fishery. So it's really important to limit disturbance. And because unfragmented forest of 500 acres or more is so valuable, the forested areas ought to be areas to be protected on the site, no matter how it is developed. And that, what I just said, I said at the first meeting. So, and again, I think if we were concerned about too much fragmentation of that forest at the first pre-application meeting, we're certainly more concerned about it now, because now I don't think there's much left on the site that's not disturbed. The density is controlled by DEM regulations. I think even though the state passed this law, the state law, it's got 25% affordable, 50% affordable, and 100% affordable. And you get a different density bonus, and the density bonus goes up to 24 bedrooms per acre, but DEM rules are 6.5 bedrooms per acre for a regular septic system, unless it's a real super nitrogen reducing system. So the state law did give you density bonuses, but what's really going to control it is the amount of septage per acre over the whole site, not under each septic system. So the fact that it's two bedroom units limits your bedrooms a little bit. So that's how you're making the calculation, but the state law doesn't really make sense. It doesn't really
We're
work.
not
The
consistent.
job is just to follow it.
No, I know, but you can't, at the same time, you
Yeah,
can't
you
override
planted the wrong guy.
DEM. So, and you haven't, but the first proposal, I think, may have Um, Again, so this represents 7.5 years of development for us. The Housing 2030 just came out with recommendations for different kinds of communities. And for this community, it's a growth rate of 0.4% per year, which works out to about 21 or 22 houses a year, which is what we do. So this one development with 158 houses represents 7.5 times what housing, both what the state is saying we should be doing and what we do normally. So it's really a huge impact. One of the things in your narrative, you say the houses are 2,400 square feet. That's a really big house. That's bigger than most houses in Charlestown. I know new houses being built are coming in, and please forgive my throat because I had a lot of treatments to my throat, and I'm getting over it. So if I sound strained, I'm not really. It's just a little messed up. But it doesn't make sense for a 2-bedroom house to be 2,400 square feet, and so we don't. It's not making sense. Why did that be?
Ruth, you gotta speak up.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I apologize again. Have you created a pro forma yet?
Yeah, so we do have a performer, and we've also created elevations, and I've got an architect with me who
Okay.
can kind of go through the layouts and the
Are you?
it's still a conceptual plan, but it gives you a sense of what we're
Mhm.
thinking about as far as what they'll look like and the sizes and kind of the breakdown.
Another
They're
thing,
not gonna be one floor, so it's gonna be a single floor.
one floor.
But it's still big.
Yeah.
Probably about 80 acres.
No, just that in terms of 75% of these are market rate, and at 2,400 square feet, that's hitting the high end of the market. And 41% of the housing in Charlestown is currently being bought by out-of-state buyers because they can bid things up, and big houses is going to be you're aiming at that. I don't know what your intention is, but a big house is going to be aiming at that market. So that doesn't really help
We can
housing.
always go back. I mean, the size is not a big deal. We can, take a look at how we can diminish these a bit. And maybe when we do that, we might be able to create some more spacing. So that's something we can take into account and go back.
Yeah, I mean, because they're one story, 2,400 square feet is a big footprint.
But so, I mean, we're just following the law, and the law is not dictating who's buying these houses, whether they're coming from out of state or whether they're buying small houses or big houses. What the state law is saying, hey, we have a housing crisis. Charlestown hasn't met your obligations, and so this is a city in which, and by the other new change to the law is that there are no communities in Rhode Island that will be exempt from comprehensive permits. So the thrust behind this law is to create more housing. And it's giving property owners the ability to do that in a market which is constrained, which is costly to build. I mean, that's one of the reasons why the 23 or 21 unit cluster single family home development didn't work. It just wasn't penciling out. And those are going to be 4,000 square foot houses, 3,000 square foot houses. Those are total different. I mean, that's a flip side of the coin compared to what is being proposed now. But since then, the cost of construction, I wouldn't say double. I think it's probably more than that. It's certainly far more expensive than the last time we were here. And the way it's going next year, it's going to be even more.
But seeing as in your narrative, you quote the comprehensive plan as to provide a range of housing opportunities. This is one segment. Charlestown's population is already aging, according to the census, and this will just exacerbate it more. But we do need housing for workforce people, etc. And so this doesn't do that. And it's kind of out of scale with all our other neighborhoods. And it doesn't reinforce Charlestown's rural heritage, I don't think, or small village character or an environmental setting. So the stuff you quote as conformance with the comprehensive plan, I have some disagreement with. So I'm just
One of the other things we can consider is we can make a component of this age restricted and another component non-age restricted. We can, and we would have to think about that because one of the problems with doing that is you'd have to create separate condo associations. So normally what you would do in that instance is you'd have one master association and then two sub-associations. One association, which would govern the age restricted units, and then another association, which would govern regular units. And we may make the age restricted smaller and make the other units bigger, where you would have 2-3 bedrooms. Because now you're not targeting, empty nesters, you're targeting workforce, and workforce is a family. Workforce doesn't mean that they're 55 and older, they're on the other spectrum, they're 25 and older, starting and getting into the housing market, and they're finding it a barrier. So if that's something you'd like, we certainly could break that up.
Are you talking about the affordable units or the market rate?
Both.
There's nothing,
There's a need for
Yeah.
both.
I think that,
nothing you do with the market rate units is going to make them affordable.
I can't distinguish.
Yeah.
No.
Whatever I do for yin, I gotta do for
Yeah.
yang. So it's,
Yeah.
they've gotta be the same. So you gotta get out of the mindset of, well, I'm gonna make this LMI unit look like it's, something that I don't wanna look at. But
Oh, no,
it's not.
no.
It's gotta be all,
but it could
we will open into the fabric.
It even could be something like a duplex that looks like all the other houses or something like that. But I'm just finding it difficult to have this conversation fully, seeing as there seem to be so many variables that we're not discussing what we're looking at here. We're discussing. Yeah, I agree, but
I'm here, so
but
if you're telling me that, if I'm understanding you, saying, well, this is a community that's already aged. And so now you're adding or exacerbating that. Well, the way to resolve that is to diminish the amount of age restricted units.
Yeah.
Rather than propose 158 units, we propose half. And then you say, well, we want to target a younger element so that we can provide housing for the starter.
But we would have to
That's
have.
fine.
Yeah.
This is an opportunity. This is a unique parcel. It's 80 acres located in the town that is going to be developed, and it's before you as a comprehensive permit. And you're the planning board. This is the planning stage. This is how we decide how we're going to plan the
Right.
use of this.
But if you
And
want
that
our input as to what would work for us, then we need time to discuss that as a board.
well, I
rather-
also,
That's why you.
Rather than at this meeting.
Like the chairwoman said,
Yeah.
comments, and I'm not.
I think Francis is speaking basically,
I'm sorry.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I think Francis was speaking about the comprehensive plan when she was talking about that. I don't think she was talking for the
Oh,
board.
no,
At
we
least
haven't
wasn't
discussed it.
necessarily talking for me. And also, when you start getting into that, you're going to change the dynamics of whether we're going to have an increase in burden on the regular taxpayers when you start to have children within it. I think it would be important also to listen to the public that's here and sort of get a feeling sort of for what they think too. But I don't necessarily think that 55 and older is a problem, or that if not, I don't see why they would have to be different. I mean, I think it's, yes, if you have a family, what do you have to have at the extra room, or is it to get the extra income in order to facilitate it? What is the goal there? And I think that as an older person, it is nice to have children near you. You don't get as old, when you're sitting in a little box. But that's just my personal opinion. I don't know if that's best for the neighborhood, for this town. I think there were a lot of unanswered questions personally. But I think Frances was talking about the comprehensive
Yeah.
plan because she, we all worked very hard on that. Most of the board that's here now has worked very hard. And so we do have a good understanding of it. So,
Yeah, I'm just
I don't
saying,
know.
it doesn't, the words don't necessarily mesh. That was what I was saying. And there are a lot of other questions that we have, I think, so we may as well
Yeah.
move on
Yeah,
from that. But
go.
I'm just pointing that out, that there's other aspects to this.
Just a question about your wells. Two of the wells are shown on the open space for the Oakwood Drive subdivision. And the Department of Health requires that you control the entire wellhead protection area. So, and you do have room to pull those into your, it appears to me that you have room to pull those wells into your property. They're just kind of going over the border into and otherwise you need to get easements from all the people who own homes in that subdivision. And so, but that might slow you down. Multifamily requires a 100-foot buffer, and we had a similar proposal in another part of town. The zoning officer, because this is condominiums, it falls under that, so you need a 100-foot buffer. And it needs to be planted, screened, or otherwise maintained to protect the abutting land uses and the abutters. And I think when you get a note, when you get a review from the zoning officer, you're gonna get that. And on your plan, your septic systems are currently shown right up to the property line, as well as not each of them, but some of them. And the stormwater structures are also right up to the property line. So they would have to be away from the buffer because you can't have trees within a certain number of feet of the septic system, unless it's a different kind of septic system that doesn't worry about tree roots. Cisterns, that part of town, the fire marshal, Mr. Babola, or Fire Marshal Babola, will require cisterns. I don't know how many he will require. I have no idea, but we don't want that to come in at the end after you've designed it. So, so you have to talk to him, or we need to make sure he knows about this.
Not about systems yet.
Do fire departments ever use, I thought they could use public wells, community wells,
But regardless, we're gonna submit
Yeah,
the plan.
either way, yeah.
To fire for their review and recommendation.
So they may or may not.
Submit the plan
Well,
to the
yeah.
DPW, so all the agencies
Yeah,
will get.
if there's something, that he goes with besides cisterns, but he will have an opinion, and he has some jurisdiction over the fire suppression. As all outdoor lighting on these have to be full cutoff fixtures and the minimum lighting necessary, so if lights shouldn't be on all the time. And did you say DEM has verified all the wetlands, including the areas subject to storm flowage? I don't know.
We've verified them, we've outlined them, they haven't been submitted to DEM yet, they'll be submitted as part of our stormwater, or part of our RIPD's permit.
Yeah, I think you'll have to get a wetlands permit.
Yeah.
That's gonna incorporate RIPD's. We do require an environmental assessment for a major land development. I don't know how that, I don't know how that works with the, Low and Moderate Income Act, but I think
As I said at the outset.
it's changing
As
all
I
the
said at the
time.
outset, it's we will provide you an
Okay.
environmental impact study. Because it's part of what the statute doesn't address it straight on, but it does say that we have to show that there is no negative environmental impact.
Yeah, so
So we do that
so
and give you
in
a
our,
study,
in our subdivision regulations, we do have, an environmental assessment.
correct?
And so, things that you would need to address are impacts on, quantity and quality of the water supply for the area in general, impacts on the stream, impacts on the climate corridor, the unfragmented forest, the wildlife in general, impacts on traffic, impacts on light pollution. And anything that's in that environmental assessment list and anything that Sean might suggest to you tonight or later.
When it comes to environmental, I think one issue that we've not discussed tonight is the remediation required following the excavation activity, and what needs to be done to this property to get it to a place where it's suitable for the residential use and will meet permitting requirements for the septics.
Yeah.
Do you have any comment on
Sorry?
it? Can you give us any indication of what it would take to remediate the area?
Well, it's not a question of remediate,
Oh.
because there's nothing to take out, it's to bring in.
All right,
And so.
Restore.
or to make
Right.
it suitable for
Yeah, exactly.
residential
exactly.
development?
So that, I mean, that material, some of which may be brought in, a lot of which is already there on site. It's gonna change the contours and you're gonna level it out, and as you do your cuts and fills, you're gonna take care of the low areas and bring in some of the other high areas. You're gonna see the road profiles that we're gonna submit. So part of what we're gonna submit at preliminary is gonna be the topography, and so you'll see what's, what is going where. It's not gonna affect not gonna affect the development of this. Some of these units may have basements, some may not, some may be on slabs, so that will change what we will need to do as far as leveling things out there.
When in this process does the excavation end?
So that's a good question.
So if I could answer that first question that
You
you
need
talked
to be
about.
at a mic.
So the development is on top of the existing gravel pit, so, sorry, I can't walk too good.
I'm
Okay.
sorry.
So the
We've got a-
existing, I'll just talk loud. So the existing development, portion of it goes over where the gravel pit is right now, so when you talk about remediation, that area is going to.
Time out, sir.
I don't know who you are.
So you have to identify yourself.
She asked me a question.
Yeah, that's all right. No, but-
That's Enrico Di Gregorio.
Henry Di Gregorio?
Enrico, Enrico. So to answer the first question, the portion that you can see right there, where there's like a little bit of a loop.
Oh,
And
yeah.
the little area where it's like a small little, what do we call that thing at?
Stormwater basin?
It's like a little community center, basically. That's where all the existing
Oh.
gravel pit is. So that whole area, as part of the development, that's when the remediation comes into play.
Yeah.
So I wanted to just answer that one. And what was the other question, John?
The,
When does it cease?
oh yeah, the excavation, when does the,
So when we're done with the development, basically.
How do you mean?
So during the process of building, you're gonna be still extracting?
No, the remediation will be done when we're done with the development.
what about the earth extraction?
Oh, that'll happen. Once we get the permit to do the work, then we'll cease the operation.
Okay,
I'm
so there
confused
will
now.
not be excavation going on when you are
Correct.
clearing the rest of the
Yes.
property?
But the remediation will take place as the development's going on.
Are you anticipating then doing the sort of right-hand part first?
We'll do the entire thing at
To
one time.
clear all the forest first and pull the
Not
houses
clearing
in?
all the forest. We're only gonna clear the roads,
Mhm.
and then the rest of the lots are gonna be wooded. But the area that does have the existing gravel bank now, that's the area with the loop in it. That's the area that we're going to build and remediate at the same
And
time.
landscape
because That's
and-
where the roads and all the infrastructure basically is.
Do the rectangles around the lot represent the limits of disturbance, or what is that representing?
The rectangles, those are the houses.
That's the house.
Yeah, those little squares.
Yeah,
Yeah, those are the houses.
those are big.
They're not that big. Just to throw it out there, 2,400 square feet was just a number.
Okay,
It's the biggest at 2,400. They could end up being, I think, 2,000 is what we came up with. So we're thinking anywhere between 2,000 and 2,400, but I agree with you. I think 2,400 is still on the big side. I'm thinking it's gonna be more like 2,000 square feet.
So one of my concerns with a house that size and a two-bedroom house is that there's really other rooms in there that will become bedrooms. And then you've designed
septic's
the septic, the overall density, the permits with DEM on a number of bedrooms and people start using bedrooms. A question I have is, how do these not become, the market rate units, how do they not become short-term rentals?
That's a good question. So I think that can be handled by the condo association. And that can be governed in the condo documents to either eliminate renting or the ability to rent or to minimize the ability to rent. So that can be addressed. But you have to be careful because you can only do it to a certain degree.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's something we
Yeah, because again, that's happening.
yeah.
And that puts a lot of people in a unit and a lot of septic.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, so, good, no, I'm saying, just philosophically, you build a lot of houses. If it's Charlestown that needs housing for residents, this does not necessarily help because you have no jurisdiction over who buys them or uses them, and it just may be making the situation worse for us. I know that's not something we can really argue about because the LMI Act is what it is and housing rules are what they are. But it just seems like, when we're looking at the comprehensive plan and saying this is what Charlestown needs in various areas, it doesn't do that because we have no control. It's not specifically for Charlestown people. So it doesn't necessarily ameliorate our problem. I'm not sure it even ameliorates the state's problem, but that's what we have to deal with.
I have a question on the fire access road that will be somehow gated off so that it is just,
Yeah.
because I think that was a good idea.
Yeah, it really could have either a gate with a key to the fire department or
Right,
breakaway gates.
There are other areas in town that have that.
We'll coordinate that with the fire marshal.
Right.
It's just nice to.
And
nice to
the
see
roads are as much impervious,
Yeah, that's
much pervious.
And they'll run through they'll run this through a simulator just to make sure that the emergency apparatus vehicles have
Right, that's,
the appropriate
yeah,
turnaround.
because you're got circles all the way, yeah.
That's it.
And you have permission to cross that other property,
I believe we do, yeah.
so you'll need that with.
Yeah, we'll have that. We'll have all the legal documents too.
It's nice to see some amenity put in there. But
Yeah, when you look at the right hand, lower left, I'm sorry, that's basically a community center. So part of this will have a community center. I don't know if we've thought about yet what we'll offer as an amenity, but that's something we'll.
one concern I would have with that is that it be done along with the housing as the housing goes along, because often in these developments, they promise this, that, and the other, and it never gets put in, or it's not put in.
To put in, and then
Right.
yeah.
And
And that's a condition that I've seen boards do that says that you have to build the amenities consistent or contiguous with the overall.
contemporaneously, yeah.
So if we have a little lull here, we can come back to the commission, but we have a lot of public.
Yeah.
Unless you have no, we can, but we will come back.
Yeah.
I just had one question
Sure.
about the septic's maintenance. Is there a lot of historical data to support like a cluster of houses using one septic system as far as like liabilities if somebody were to dump something down there or somehow mess up a line going to it that would affect all the houses that were tapped into that?
I don't know if there is. I don't know if there's any real data on that. We can find out through DM. I mean, it's not an uncommon thing. It's not provided for. It would be maintained by the association, part of the obligations of the association. I'm sure the unit owners will be policing that pretty extensively.
I would imagine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, we're gonna come back to the commission because we still have questions, but there's so many people from the public. I don't want people to go home if they have a question. So And just go up and identify yourself and your name and where you live for the stenographer. And if other people have questions, just go right up. You don't have to ask me, just go right up.
Neil Williamson, 39 Rydam Way, Charlestown, Rhode Island.
What was your street, 39?
Rydam, Riidam. Okay, it's funny, I'm looking at this cluster. Charlestown, basically the zoning, the houses are apart. So water usage tends to be spread out over large areas. The average US citizen uses 100 gallons of water a day. So typically, if this is at full occupancy, you're talking over 300 people, so 30,000 gallons a day, million gallons a month. All over 60 plus acres. You have 3 wells, which we're probably gonna have to be pulling at least 100 gallons a minute each, maybe more. My concern is the abutting property owners. Such a draw on the water is gonna drop the water levels. I do this for a living. I run a water pumping station, 7 high yield wells, and a treatment facility. So I don't see how this is not gonna affect the abutting property owners with that amount of water. And to make it worse, you're gonna have these, I mean, they're supposed to be market value homes, but the people who come in, they're gonna want green lawns. There's gonna be irrigation, all right? And if it's privately owned, who puts out restrictions?
Condo association.
Better yet,
Hmm.
most places, when the big development goes in, the water department gets a letter from the developers, can you serve us? Do you have enough water to serve us? They won't even start till they know there's enough water there. That mechanism isn't in place here because Charlestown doesn't have public water.
Right.
So who monitors that? Who monitors the water quality? It's gonna need treatment. It's gonna need pH control, corrosion control, because there are acts, lead and copper. We all heard about Flint, Michigan. So you got lead and copper, you're gonna have to have a treatment facility.
Iron and manganese.
That means they're gonna have to have a licensed operator on. Now, now that person's gonna have to answer to the state. But again, I was getting back to now when we have dry situations, those people are gonna want their grass green. Where my system, where I work, we put the squash on that because it's a waste. We can't keep water in the tanks. As far as I can tell, there's no storage there. So they're pumping to demand. So it just seems to me that the size of that project should be contingent upon how much water is available. Will it sufficiently serve it without, with no detriment to the abutting property owners? I myself, my own well, where I live, I've been there since '89. I've had to lower it twice. It used to be set at 40 feet. I am now set at 120 feet. So it's not just that is affecting, it's just overall development. The water levels are dropping. And having something like that just squashed into one area with no public supply, I think it's not going to be do well for the abutting property. That's all I can see. It's I don't know how you can build something like that without even knowing you have enough water.
So because they're gonna be public wells, they're regulated by
Yes, Safe Water Drinking Act, yeah.
they're regulated by the Department of Health.
Well, which is also, it's the Safe Water Drinking Act, which is by the Department of Health, correct?
And so they do test them.
They will.
But one of the things we've asked for is that, and again, there may be more things we asked for, but to outline the impacts on the quantity and quality of the water supply for the area in general.
Right, they would have to do an active stress test. They'd have to see what the maximum safe yield is.
So one of the things, I don't know if it, usually for large developments, we alert the applicant that we might have peer review. And will that work with this process?
So under your state law and your subdivision regs, you can always request peer review. When you're being upfront about it, there's a large project.
Yeah.
There's
So besides saying this right now, that we might have peer review, or we might have our own experts, or whatever, I forget what we have to do. Do we have to tell them that they're gonna pay for part of it?
Well, that's all governed by the state law and the subdivision regs, so.
Okay.
And again, you have a planner and an attorney for the applicant that have had plenty of communication leading up to tonight. I would imagine that communication would continue and those sorts of things would get worked out, and if needed, we.
But I just want to make sure that they get this information at the right time, and we're not told later on it's too late to ask. So,
Sure.
so have I done enough in saying that?
We would,
The better question would be to ask the applicant if they have any questions.
Oh, but-
Yeah, so we don't have any questions about that.
okay.
But we will provide, look, we've done it in the past. We'll get an appropriate engineer. Bob Ferrara is the engineer we usually use to do the water calculations.
Is the hydrologist?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a hydrologist, correct. And so we'll do that. And if you want to do peer review, I know Par Engineering has done peer review on another project that I did in Tiverton, which had a big issue on water, stress test on water. So yeah, I think that's fair.
But I think that's a definite concern for many residents is their water and the water quality with septic and everything else. So I agree.
Wait, one more thing. We also do usually ask, when they do the homeowners association rules, one of the things could be, and usually is, no use of chemicals and no,
No irrigation.
Pesticides and herbicides,
Right.
pesticides and herbicides.
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
and also,
Fertilizers.
we can, and ask for no watering of land, you know.
And again, that's all gonna be, so all the green area is gonna be controlled by the condo association. So,
And where is that green area?
so, well, you can't really tell on this map here because it's all white, but
Yeah, but if those squares are houses.
yeah, squares are houses. so
And
it
roads,
needs
I
to be-
mean, there's not much,
left.
there's not much left. There's a few spots, but between each of those houses, what's going on?
That's gonna be grass.
Okay, so,
Only
and that's the concern, if you have huge amounts of grass and the forest is gone, the
Yeah.
hydrology's really
Change.
changed because the forest is absorbing that right now,
Yeah.
you know, and cleaning the water. So you're losing all that. So you are really changing the site. And so I think these are valid concerns that people have.
Thank you.
All right. You don't have to ask me. You can just go right up. Just that's faster. So I want to make sure there's time for everybody, and then we're gonna.
I'm
Talk
Stephanie
about
Billingson. I live at 39 Ryden Way in Charlestown, Rhode Island. When I'm looking at this map, I only see one way in and one way out in this development. And I think that's not good for safety. If something happens in the development, they need more than one way to get out. You see that there's
Yeah,
only
so-
one road?
So what they have, and it's passing over somebody else's property right now. I think they have an agreement for,
I'd have to look at that. I don't know if I don't see why we would be passing over someone else's property.
because there's another property there. So there, see that, there's a triangle that comes down.
So that's probably, that's not.
Well,
Yeah, that's all.
Well,
but you're,
it's not shown on the map.
you're,
I live on a private road
Right.
and we only have 12 houses on it and there was an emergency and there was a problem getting out. So I just, looking at that, I think there needs to be one more way than getting out. And the other thing that I was just thinking about was the low income housing and the moderate is with the, what do you call the condominium fees?
Condominium fees.
Added that to their mortgage, it kind of takes the low income out of it. If you're adding another $300, $600 onto their mortgage fee.
yeah. So what the Rhode Island Housing does, they have a calculator. If you go to Rhode Island Housing's website and the number of people living in the house and also whether they are at 80% or 100% or 120% of median income. They tell you how many dollars they can earn per month to do that. And then they take the current interest rates and the condo fee that they're gonna charge. So there's a total, there's a certain amount per month they can afford, you know, it's so many thousands of dollars or whatever. And then the condo fee gets subtracted from that. So the amount they can charge for the house is ruled by all those things. If there were no condo fees, they could charge more, but they will have to charge less. And if you go to Rhode Island Housing, it's hard to find, but I could send the link to the planner, who may already know how to get there.
Thank you.
And you can see, but I think I did this last year. I don't know if I put it in my notes. So I did it just for 120% because that's what that development was aiming at. And for a family of four, which this probably wouldn't be, and if the interest rate was 6.7 and the condo fee is 300, they could charge $400,000 for the house. For a family of two, earning 120%, with interest at 6.7 and still the condo fee 300, they could charge 310,000 for the house. But that's at 120%, goes much lower with the lower. Usually the developers are coming in at 120%, for that reason. But just identify yourself.
Homes, 25 Haley Brook Drive,
25 Haley Brook.
yes. I downsized from Richmond to Charlestown in 2001. And my house is 450 feet from Haley Brook. Okay, now, Haley Brook at the time moving in was flowing continuously all year. And in 1947, the state used to start trout in that river. Now, Woody Hill feeds it. And it's since the Shelter Harbor Golf Course was built, which is supposed to be pumping water, irrigating their golf course by wells. And yeah, I don't know this factual, but I believe they're pumping it out of the swamp at Woody Hill. Maybe to save on electricity, I don't know. But anyways, that river now, or Haley Brook, is flowing a lot now, but come late July into August, it'll just be a trickle. Last August, it was dry. There was just puddles. So since that's been going on, I don't water the ground. I do, I'm proud of it. I have one of the nicest ones. Very little watering in the gardens and on the lawn. But I have pumped my well dry in the last couple of years, 3 or 4 times, and I can do it anytime during the summer I want, simply by just running sprinklers. My well's 200 feet deep. Okay, and Hoxie has come out and it raised up the pump once. I see them coming through the neighborhood. They were just there the other day. They probably come through the neighborhood 4 or 5 times a year. Now, I don't know if that's because they're doing maintenance on the other houses, the 26 houses that are there, 21 or 26, or because of people having well problems. But I just want to point out that if you look at Haley Brook, which I know these folks are pumping water out of for their stone crusher, I've seen the 2 hoses down there. I have game cameras set. I'm out in that area so I can watch the coyotes and all of them. But you know, if you look at it, what'd you call it, a hydraulic guy? If he comes down and does a survey, he's gonna think everything's great. But he doesn't live there, so he doesn't know what's happening way down. So, you know, to my well, for example. So I don't know what happens to anybody else's. I have to assume they're all same situation possibly. That's all I wanted to.
Thank you.
One of those wells is close.
So is there anyone else who has comments?
Stephanie Sean.
I can hear you.
Stephanie Sean. Can you spell your last name?
SHAWN, 350 Ross Hill Road. So I'm basically across the street from what's going on, and it's been horrible. I didn't know about any of this in the beginning. I called the town hall one day because I was hearing explosions, and I was like, what is going on? And I was told by somebody at the town hall that they had a sand and gravel business, and that they had decided to start it going again. I didn't know, and I'm ignorant. I did not pay attention to what was going on. So I fault myself for that, but now I'm trying to rectify that. But it's just, it has affected everybody in this room, I'm assuming. We have the trucks going 6:30 in the morning. They're just don't start till 7, but they start driving up the road 6:30. Huge trucks. We have pools. Our pools are filled with silt. You know, you wipe your table down 5 minutes later, the silt coming through the air is whatever. And so when they were saying about the wells, we have also had to change our wells. The pond out back in Woody Hill is completely dry. I don't know where they're getting their water from this. Across the street, where he said the Haley Pond Road guy, those are dry. Out back is completely dry. There's no water left. So where is all this water coming from? To do all of this. This place is massive. We will, my husband has a friend who can fly, and we have flown over this many times, and to see the scope of when this started to the size it is now is staggering. You people would be just staggered by the immense size of this place. And across the street, the pond that we abut, Woody Hill Pond back there, is completely dry. It used to be, it had beavers, it had things, so there's a change in this whole climate. The forest is gone. It's completely gone. There's no forest on their side over there. There's nothing left. It's all sand, all gravel, all everything. They've cleared everything. So, you know, this remediation or whatever they're saying, they're gonna bring everything back in. They've destroyed the land. So, you know, this conservation thing that they were talking about and everything else, they have literally destroyed it to see the small space. So Jason, I'm sorry, but he is the driveway that we're talking about, that these big trucks go by every day. They're literally affecting his life 1,000 times a day as they go back and forth with these huge trucks filled with dirt and sand. And yes, did we buy houses by a quarry? But I've been there 30 years. There was never anything at that time doing all of this. So, you know, it's like when you buy a house in downtown Stonington on the docks back in the day, and then everybody complained about the fish smell. And it was like, why did you buy a house by the docks? This is not that. It's been 30 years. And now suddenly we're dealing with just a lot. It's a lot to live there. So, you know, and how is this going to affect us? Like, where did you see the goat path that Ross Hill Road is? Where is all these cars going to go? You know, how are all these people going to fit on the road and come out of that little road every day that they're, you know, going? It's just, I just think it's insanity to put all these people on that small road that we live on. And the area is gorgeous, Burlingame and all of that, and I just feel like they're completely destroying the area, but that's my opinion.
Very good.
Thank you.
Darren Trustee,
Can you spell your last name?
Macieski. I live at 336 Klondike. I'm on my western edge of my property is the eastern edge of the gravel bank. And we've lived through all what you just described. I mean, it's been crazy. The noise, the silt, the fugitive dust blowing over, you know, just the silt running into the swamp. But that'll come to an end. But what won't come to an end is all the people. Some of those houses up on the right-hand corner are on that round loop are right up against my property. The septic is right on my property line right there. The amount of light and noise, I mean, I can't control that, but there's gonna be a lot of people in there. And it's not, you say it's 60 acres or 63 acres, that's big, but that's not that big. That's 158 houses right there, and that's gonna impact the whole area. It's not gonna improve anybody's life that lives there right now. Nobody's life is gonna get better because this was put there. And a lot of that housing will be bought up by out-of-towners. No, God bless them. They pay their taxes, they buy stuff, but that's not gonna all be Charlestown residents. That is no way that's gonna work. And I just think it's too big for the area. And, when they originally, the 23 houses, I was kind of thinking, well, that was kind of a relief. They'll stop the gravel, operation, 23 houses, R3. It'll be okay. It'll be livable, but I think that this is just too much for the area. I mean, that's my opinion, and I'm gonna be impacted. There's like 30 houses that are gonna be facing my property where my house is, where that last little, septic system is all the way up to your right corner there. That's maybe 100 feet from my barn where I have horses and a well, right now. And that's pastures. That's going to be all, there'll be all kinds of background light and, it's just too big. I think that just because the state will allow you to do it, I don't think the town of Charleston should allow us to do it. We ought to just take it into consideration. You can make as much money as you want, sell a bunch of houses, but 158 is too many.
Should mention, yeah, but we had one.
My name's David Dawley, 245 Rossdale Road.
You want to read? I can't hear.
David Dawley, 245 Rossdale Road. That's my 1 acre property with 3 septic systems, 1 on each corner. And I have my own septic system. So where's my well?
Sorry.
And well's my cousin. We've lived there for 100 years, my family. I've never met some people. That's changed. Didn't come see us, ask us anything or whatever. Has been wells dried up right there. Right in those 2 little spots there. So
Which one?
it's not something that I would like to see happen.
Mm.
Thank you.
Okay.
Cindy Hammond, I live at.
Wait a minute, hold on. I'm sorry, we're just gonna go across.
There's a lot of Wyans.
Yes, we see it.
Thank you.
I'll come over here so we can speak when you're through.
Thank you for your patience. Faith Lavasio, 30 Daventry, Charlestown. I'd like to know if I can ask questions.
Yes,
Okay.
just ask me and then,
All right, the
but
question
they can respond.
is that the applicant said that there were numerous projects that they've been involved in of similar nature that were very successful. Did I hear that?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay. What I'd like to know is, were those projects that had city services,
No,
like city water and sewer?
no, no.
He said no.
They were,
They're public septic system.
they were rural projects?
Yeah, in a form of gravel pit.
Other projects that you've developed?
Mm.
Okay. And is it fee simple ownership of the properties?
So this property is a fee simple ownership. The condominium units will also be fee simple ownership, but only to the units, not to the land.
Okay, so they will be individual, they'll be going to a mortgage company to get their loan to like any other property owner. Okay. So there's a homeowners association, HOA. Individual property homeowners will have a fee associated with their lot.
Correct.
They don't have a lot.
With this particular project, you have these special septic plans as well as the 3 community wells. And so you would have, as I would ask, will you have a reserve fund set up so that if one of these septic systems or multiple septic systems or one of the wells, and we've heard that there's a water issue, if they failed, do you have a reserve system set up so that the property owners are not hit with special assessments to correct or repair or replace the septic systems or the wells?
Yes.
Hmm?
Yes.
Okay, so your financials will show, then, am I correct? That financial support of reserves is in place for to protect the property owners.
Yeah, that's correct. And that's part of, because these will be Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, sorry, word, not compliant. And so as each unit is sold, a percentage of the condo fee that's collected goes into a reserve. That reserve is a maintenance reserve for stormwater, septic, and well.
What I know from the issues with HOA around the country, because of the expense related to these replacements, that property owners are getting hit with a lot of special assessments or extra costs related. So there has to be financials that you would provide, I hope, to the planning commission to support the.
I don't know if we're gonna, I don't know if we're gonna provide the planning board financials. I've never seen that, other than the condo documents which speak to the reserve requirements. So the condo documents will have the language that you would normally and usually see in these types of developments that call out for the reserves and how that's handled. But there's not gonna be a set of financials that's gonna be produced to the planning board.
So, just a question in there. Are the affordable lots shielded from this kind of expense?
No, so
Because they could then lose their.
yeah, no, well, you said it best. I mean, so the value of that unit or lot, we call it a unit because the land is not being sold.
Thank you very much.
Faith, I did not mean to interrupt you. I was just trying to get a follow-up
Okay,
in
I
there.
understand.
You have any more?
You
I
can,
think I've asked my questions, so thank you.
So to answer your question, the value of that LMI is gonna be changed or affected by what the condo fee is, what the mortgage is, what the taxes are. And so they're gonna sit, the LMI unit will pay the same in condo fees as the regular unit. It's just the LMI unit is gonna be sold at a lot cheaper price, a lot less price because of the condo fee. And so that condo fee, portion of it's gonna be segregated for a reserve.
I think the point she was making, though, that there could be special assessments because of a, catastrophic failure of a septic system that hits everyone in the condo association, including the affordable units, and they could then be in a position where they can't pay. Because they're gonna be
I know
much less affluent than the
but
other members.
don't view these LMI owners as complete bust outs, because they're not.
No, but
They're gonna be owning a unit that they can afford, and they're gonna be at a price point which will allow them to have the disposable income if necessary for a special assessment, just like anyone who's a market unit owner. Now, whether that family is prudent with their money, I don't know. I mean, I have no idea what they're gonna do, but the system is established so that they buy a unit which they can afford, and when they can afford, it's with the contemplation of special assessments and condo fees. Well, no different than someone who buys a market unit.
Yeah, so at
Someone buys
100
a market unit, I mean, if they're not balancing their finances right, they could be wiped out pretty quickly because special assessment.
But at 120% of median, they're, by definition, they are more affluent than the local median income. But I don't have any idea what these special assessments amount to.
I don't know, I mean, it's speculative, I don't know what they would be, but I can't say with certainty that there will never be a special assessment. I mean, you know, things happen.
Okay. We also had an emailed comment that they wanted part of the record, so I can read that. This is from Josh. Sorry.
Do you want me to read so your voice,
Okay.
just for your voices?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
You have your copy.
Joshua Valley, 246 Ross Hill Road. As I cannot be in physical attendance at the meeting tonight, I'd like to submit my opposition to the planned subdivision being proposed for Plat 16, Lot 212 on Ross Hill Road. This proposal is not in line with any version of the town that has ever been presented before its citizens. Charlestown is particularly vulnerable due to the decades of amazing work the town council, as well as planning and zoning, have done to keep it rural against the years of developmental onslaught. Now, due to this foresight, proposals such as this are brought with little regard to our town's future. The pressures and lessons to be learned are right at our borders. South Kingstown, Exeter, and others are seeing the stresses of development as they also possess the one thing many of the more developed towns do not: contiguous tracts of land that make these money grabs so appealing. With that comes many hurdles that Charlestown was not built to withstand. The town already grapples with what to do about education and school maintenance, not to mention police and fire. I do oppose this proposal and would like my opposition noted. Thank you. Anybody else?
And that's the only one we received, right? Okay. Is there any other public comment? Oh, I'm sorry, you were.
Cindy,
My
sorry.
name's Cindy Hammond. I live at 335 Ross Hill Road, and I've been there since 1989. The water dries up in the summertime. Always does, every year. I don't know how we're gonna pump out more water for more people. They take their trucks now and they fill them with water, and they use that. I live right at the corner down there on the left, the very bottom. And you see where the line's coming down of my property is definitely going across where he's got his driveway. But that's another issue. Since they've literally raped the land in the back there, there is nothing left. We've had bears in our yard, taking our chickens. I've been outside and a bobcat came near me. All kinds of wildlife it's insane. The silt that comes in my window is stuck on the screen, stuck on the windows. We have a pool. They're going by in their giant trucks. I hear Jake brakes all day long, up, down, up. I have to tell who was on the phone, hang on, truck. I thought I lived there for like 15 years and that wasn't even open. And one day it was open. And it's never stopped.
Absolutely.
It's been going on. How many years is it going to keep going? This is rotten for us. All that silt is in our pool. They don't care. Nobody cares of what's going on over there. When I moved there, it was one house per acre. How come you can't own 80 houses and that's it?
That's it.
That's not fair, putting that big flat behind us.
So they can make more money?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
And Brett
you need to.
He lives there too.
Yeah.
My property.
You stop. If you're gonna talk, you have to go to the mic and identify yourself, and I'm happy to have you do that, but we can't all talk at once.
But we've gone through hell and this is year after year after year. When is this gonna end?
So, the previous councils, went to the state. Graveling operations are very protected by state law. And, there are 7 gravel banks in Charlestown that were in operation, before, they're prohibited by the zoning in Charlestown. They're not allowed. But there are 7, gravel banks that pre-exist zoning in Charlestown. The town, with Blake Filippi, who was our state rep, went to the legislature and tried to get Charlestown the right to regulate the gravel beyond what we can do now. and they didn't get anywhere. So there's quite a lot of protection in the state legislature for this particular land use. But what there is a state law that requires that the piles be watered. So if you're getting fugitive dust, they may not be watering their piles, and I'm not an expert on that law.
Excuse me. They do take the truck and they go way out on the 80 acres while all the stuff is blowing. The trucks are going in and out. They put their driveway right, I think it's on my land, right at my land. And I have a pool. That's what we see all day long.
So it's just, there is a state law that the piles have to be watered so that there's not dust. I don't know, it sounds like there's dust from the road or something, but you should look into that. Or,
We've sat in our yard and listened to their machines go on all weekend that they don't even shut off.
Right,
They're still
so-
going.
you should contact the zoning officer, and he will make sure that they're in compliance with, whatever laws there are. But the town is very much aware that this is a difficult, place. It's a difficult, industry to live near. And there was a lot of effort to try and, get that under control. And
Why
that,
did the town allow them to reopen and then?
so again, this is because of state law. And, between the zoning official and past town councils, and I'm not saying the present town council doesn't share the same opinion, but they did try very hard, and they just don't have the laws they would need a special law passed by the state legislature to allow them to regulate the gravel banks. And they couldn't get that state law passed. And I can't remember if we had a special commission in the legislature or not. But they did try very hard, and they've tried again. I think councils that came after that failure tried again. And they still couldn't, because legislatures change, you might have a different outcome. And maybe they could get a different outcome now, because there are other gravel banks in the town that aren't ready to close down. So it's not like it's not like it's not like we're not sympathetic to this. It's really hard. There's, this is happening on Route 91 as well. People are living with blast. I live many miles from the quarry on Route 91, and there was blast there once that shook the ground under my feet. And it's like, I shouldn't be hearing that because I live so far away.
I hear that all day.
Right, and I know. And so it's like, if I hear that many miles away, it's got to be really hard. And so the fact that they're going to develop it, that will stop. But one of my concerns is that there's no forest left pretty much when this goes. So there's a whole lot of clearing that's going to go on. And is there going to be a kind of excavation that goes on with that? So while this is being built,
They're still excavating though. How?
no, I know they're going to excavate up until they're going to crush stone or do whatever it is they're doing up until the point that they get an approval. They've said that. But then you're going to have the noise from
7:30 every day.
No, I know,
construction.
but you're going to have construction noise. So I'm just saying, just because it's going to end, it's not going to end right away. But eventually it would be over. And so I
It's
think.
been years.
Right, but I think the thing to concentrate on is the application that's proposed, because in the end, that's what you're gonna get, and then the gravel bank will be gone. It's
Do
gonna
we
take.
have any other places in Charlestown that are doing that with the land and throwing all those buildings back there?
Not yet, because as I
We're the
said,
first.
On that road?
well, you're not the first comprehensive permit the town has had. The town has had several, and we have some that are proposed, and we've had some that are proposed that went away. But this is not the first comprehensive permit is this, and someone said this is a cluster before. This is not a cluster development. This is a comprehensive permit. Cluster there would be 20 lots or
There's
23.
a lot of houses.
Right, a cluster would have, a cluster is the same number of houses that you would have with a conventional development. So a cluster would have had 21 to 23 or whatever the yield was. And they would be clustered, but the site as a whole would be mostly open space. So it's just because people think this is a cluster, it's not. It's a comprehensive permit. So, but, what they're doing with the gravel will end.
And then it'll be cars
Right, but I'm just saying, you know,
Years of construction.
right.
and buses and kids on a bus, getting on a bus stop that's all hills.
So it's just, what I'm trying to get at is that the gravel operation we're aware of, and the town's aware of it, the zoning officer is aware of it. If your complaints should go to this, not that, you know,
Okay,
it's
'cause I'll
good to
do
hear, but, they should go to the zoning office and,
They will go out there, they have.
and they will do, but, you know, what they can under the law to make sure that the operation is, you know, watering their piles or whatever it is they're supposed to do. But they're, you know, the town doesn't have a lot of control. That's a problem.
I can't believe that all of us around the area that they're getting rich on have been through hell, and nobody cares. Nothing happens for us. Nothing's made it better for us. It's just, and it's years, worse and worse and worse. And it's basically too bad for all of us. They're gonna put that thing in no matter what goes on.
Yeah.
And we can all have our wells sucked dry. We had ours twice, we had to get it replaced.
Yeah. So we're gonna try and make sure, that the quality and quantity of water is studied. And, you know, we'll get peer review. That might be something we get peer review for. I can't say, exactly, because again, this is pre-application, we can't vote. But in terms of no one caring, the town, you know, previous town councils, and again, the zoning office, I don't think people could have cared more. It's just that they don't have any tools or power to fix it. And
But I wish I knew this before I bought my house. That lot and that back there has been a thorn in my ass.
that we,
Put that in.
well, yeah, she has to put everything in. So voice,
So
so,
sick of it.
yeah. I think everyone here is sympathetic to that as far as
They
I
don't
know.
live there. They don't live in there dealing with this every morning.
We've actually had commissioners that have,
Yeah.
have lived in that area. So we know exactly what you're going through, and it is awful. When I campaigned to run this time, neighborhoods 2 miles away were complaining.
But I didn't do anything for us, did it, people?
No,
None of
no,
this.
but remember, you do have state legislatures.
Question about that.
We've done, is your last name Williams?
Stephanie Williamson, 39 Ryden Way, Charlestown, Rhode Island. We've had other quarries around our house that ended up being bad actors. And go in the middle of the night and the land is raped and it's just left that way. And I'm wondering, since this is the quarry's gonna end, but there's gonna be a neighborhood then, is he going to in fact have the quarry fixed so that it looks back to land that's feasible for a neighborhood?
So they're putting.
And I'm wondering if there's bad acting going on here,
Well,
can we vote this? Just
Yeah.
another way of doing it.
so I can't say that there's, bad,
Well, people call zoning all summer long, every day.
amen. But again, that's about an operation that's gonna end. So they have to, restore that, and that's one of the things that our planner asked for in the beginning, was that there be a plan of how it's gonna be restored, and it wouldn't get approval until it was restored. So, you know,
I'm aware of the environmental concerns, but specifically the siting of the septic systems in that type of material, whatever may be out there now, it will need to pass a DEM standards, and really they should remediate or restore it in order to make it an attractive place for people to live. But I believe they probably, and I'm not an expert, but they would probably also need to do it in order to obtain their permits.
Yeah.
So.
Right, so, not every, place that's been gravelled is gonna be, suitable for a septic system, and that's gonna be an issue that they'll have to show that that's, that the soil that's left or the gravel is gonna support septic.
My name is Pat Riley, 245 Ross Hill Road. I just have a lot of questions that I don't know if any of you are going to answer it. That gentleman over there sort of answered one. So they're allowed to mine, they're excavating, which they're mining right now. And then after they disturb the land, they're allowed to build on top of the land that they disturbed and put septics on there that usually we do deeps and perks on to see if that land will support the septic system.
Yeah,
They're allowed to do that. You're allowed to disturb the land and then you're allowed to build on top of it and bring more material in. Does anybody have that
It's the DM.
answer?
DM.
The standards that they'll have to meet are set by DEM for the septic permits, the on-site wastewater treatment system permits. I don't know what criteria they use for the quality, the type of material or fill that may be brought in. My understanding is that off-site fill is allowed to be brought in, but I don't know that for sure. My understanding is that that would be an issue that's worked out with DM through permitting, but they would have to show on their plans what they propose to do. And then once we have that in black and white, we can evaluate whether or not what they're proposing is legal. Does that make sense?
Sort of.
They haven't specified what they're proposing to do, so it's hard for us to say whether or not it's allowed at this point.
So there's really no regulations in this town or this county, just what the state says?
Well, there are components of projects such as drinking water, septics, that the town cannot insert itself into that. It's the jurisdiction of the state. Some things are under the jurisdiction of the state. We cannot insert ourselves into those situations because there is another body or another agency that's responsible for reviewing that and potentially approving or denying that. So this body or the town isn't allowed to come in those situations and say, well, we know better than the state, so we're going to deny because we don't like whatever you get. So it's hard, again, it's hard to say exactly. I don't have a clear picture of what they're proposing and which areas of that will be under the state's jurisdiction, but we will know more as the more intricate engineering work is done and they actually tell us in black and white what it is they're going to do out there.
So like they have the well on the far right side where that circle is, that's a well, correct? Proposed well?
Correct.
By the swamp. How do they plan on getting that line from that point all the way over to the units?
Through wetlands.
It's not
Looks like
clear.
they have to go right through swamp to me.
It's not clear based on this plan, but again, a well, the drinking water would be regulated by the Department of Health, the State Department of Health.
Right.
So the Department of Health will have requirements for what is allowed, how they have to transport it. They'll be reviewing all of that when they.
And then they will go in front of wetlands?
Correct.
Okay.
so,
I'm not an expert on drinking water or wells. I imagine that the applicant's engineer understands what the requirements are that they have to meet. And as they move forward, they'll have to propose something that meets them, or they won't get their permits.
So basically, there are a lot of regulations in this town that they have to go through before the state can't override anything.
It's the other way around.
So the state, you could override the state.
No.
State could override you guys.
It is.
The state has.
It's a jurisdictional issue.
So basically, it's a 3 acre zoning, correct? And they want to put this in. Don't you think they should have done all the test holes and the soil tests and everything else before they started mining?
That's separate activity. The excavation is separate from the housing proposal.
Well, it's, yeah, they're mining, they're not excavating. They're mining. Excavating is when you go in and you clear a lot and then you get ready and you build a house and then you put the septic in after you do all the testing. Then you get all your permits and then you meet the regulations. I don't understand how they could clear the land, get rid of it, and then decide they could build on top of that without doing any test sites, test holes. That's
No, they
that's
have
what's
to do-
mind boggling.
They will have to do test holes
You
at,
can't, how do you do a test hole when you mine it?
So,
How do you do that? You can't.
that will be the applicant's engineer's
Well,
responsibility.
if you look on the satellite picture of what I have, you go into 1, 2, that third lot, straight back. They already touched, they cleared probably 25% of this property. How much land are they allowed to clear on 78 acres?
so under the extractive industry, again, it's the state, I think it's the whole parcel. And I think what could happen is that they could actually excavate the whole parcel. I'm not sure that, and they probably know, I'm not sure that the whole parcel yields good gravel or something because the geology changes partway through that parcel. So there's a line about where they are, but I'm neither a geologist nor an excavator, and not an excavator, an extractive industry expert. So anyway, theoretically, under the state law that we tried to change, they can go and do the whole property. They have to have a buffer, which is, I think, 100 feet or something.
But that's mining, but then.
Right, but they, technically, they could do that. So, but in our regulations, we did not push this when they came in for the original subdivision because we were looking, I don't know I can't say what we were doing, but in my conversations with the previous planner was not to push this too much, but this is in our regulations. It says land must be remediated before development can be approved. Land that has been environmentally disturbed or damaged, for example, by removal or excavation of soil or mineral resources, must be restored to a condition satisfactory for redevelopment prior to plan approval. Again, the miscommunication or misunderstanding in the original application was normally when somebody comes in to develop, who had a disturbed property, we want them to get it back to condition before it's developed. But we understood that there's a extracted industry there, that it's really hard on the neighborhood, and that, letting them continue and do the conservation development was kind of a compromise because they were saying they weren't going to stop until that was approved. And they're still doing that. I don't know that they, under the current circumstances, can still say that because, basically that was a stick for us saying, if you don't let us do this development, we'll keep excavating. So, but I think we should look at that part of our regulations. And again, the low and moderate income housing may trump that. But it's supposed to be remediated before development can be approved, not after. So we just need to look at our regulations, but I don't know.
But they would go.
Again, because we didn't push it before.
Well, I'll say a couple of things. First, that prior application isn't technically in front of you right now. You
No, I
have
know.
Jurisdiction over the pre-app in front of you. And how the applicant proceeds, it remains to be seen. They may, look at that and decide we're going to do different actions prior to submitting an application for preliminary? We don't know yet, right? There used to be the master plan phase that had more of a defined conceptual review, and I appreciate the applicant providing more than technically is what is required under a normal pre-app, but because they're facing similar conceptual issues of not having that development phase here, right? So I don't want to speculate. It remains to be seen. They're getting your feedback tonight that is good and productive as part of pre-app. The third thing I'll say is we're now past the 9 o'clock hour.
Yeah.
And I believe the steno needs a break or she's going to
Okay.
quit on us. So I'm going to recommend a recess or something.
Yeah. So this is just, you know, a 5-minute bathroom break or a 10-minute, what would you like?
5 is fine.
Okay.
I'm gonna go to 11 at least.
No, but we don't take too long of a break. So, a break. Can we have a 5-minute break right now and, come back at 10 past? Okay, our break is over. Hopefully everyone is back, who's coming back. One of the things we're required to do is a site walk of the whole property, so we need to, set that up. And, we can either do that tonight or, Sean can,
You want to do sidewalk tonight? I got a good light, but not that good.
well, we're getting like your lighting.
Yeah, let's go.
You guys
Set the machine up.
are pretty aggressive.
Yeah, 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 we'll go out with our phones if they're charged, no. So either Sean can do a survey of the applicant and all the members to try to find a date, or,
Well, I don't know how the board feels about doing a site walk with the preliminary, pre-application information that we have. Frankly, I wonder how much of this could change when it gets fully engineered. So for that reason, I had suggested, or rather, we were gonna hold off on doing TRC until we get a preliminary plan submission. It might be best to do a site walk when we have those materials, so we understand what the actual plan and layout will be. So we could do a site walk with these materials. I just wonder, well, you know, it'll give you a chance to see the site. I just wonder how these plans might change as it goes to the next.
I agree.
I think it would still be useful to see the site as it is. And then we know what the changes are that we see at the next stage.
Well, the site won't change
No,
based on what they propose, but
right.
again, in terms of what we're trying to understand about the site and reconcile it with their plans, you know, I leave that to the board. It's your preference.
yes, the only thing is it, how cast in stone is it by the time they've done all their engineering? Sometimes when we have a site, and it's hard because there's nothing being preserved, but sometimes when we have a site walk, we'll discover, you know, a vernal pond or, no, you know, it's just we found graveyards. And we're not going to do that, there is one on here, but we're not going to do it that carefully because it's such a big site. We're not going to see the whole thing. Not that we're doing an inspection like that, but you just discover something and say, you know, this area is much hillier than we thought, and it's beautiful and white, but we don't have that option here because you're not doing open space, so.
Right. Well, it sounds like the applicant's pretty firm on the number of units that they're going to propose, again, with the caveat that it's technically feasible. Again, I just wonder if the layout might change or a road might be relocated. So again, the site will be as it is when you see it, but in terms of the information that you're trying to gather while you're out there and incorporate into your review of the plans, it's up to you.
I agree, because the vernal pool, if hypothetically, is gonna be there then too.
Yeah,
You
know,
know.
the site's gonna be the same, it's just our ability to
Can I
impact,
recommend something?
to impact.
Yeah.
Hi, Enrico Di Gregorio. So How about if we did this? I mean, I know, I heard everyone say that I've, raped and savaged the land, but technically I've only cleared about 25 acres out of the 80. So it is a big area, but it's not as massive as everyone makes it sound. How about if we shoot like a drone video of the whole entire area that you can see that's been exposed? Because the wooded area, the other, let's call it 50 acres. I mean, you gotta be a billy goat to get through there. You women will never get through it.
Sorry, I beg your pardon, but we do sidewalks on really rocky areas.
Trying to be,
Yes, I know, but.
polite about it, but I just think it's gonna be difficult to walk all that property.
Oh.
We don't-
You see, there's only about 25 acres of it that's cleared, and the rest of it is all wooded. And, the woman that did say is a bobcat, there is a bobcat that runs around in there. We see him all the time. We see deer, we see all that stuff, but, I just
Well,
think it
that's,
might be
that was
better.
Sean's point. When we know where the road is, then it makes sense to have you point that out and have you point out, there's gonna be 12 here approximately. We're gonna keep some of this wooded. We're gonna be able to tell how wooded it's gonna be at the time.
I'll do whatever
But
you
at
want.
what
You tell
point
me. I'm
does-
just trying to make it a little bit
Yeah.
easier, that's
At
all.
some point, we're
Yeah.
required to take a sidewalk.
At what point, say the next stage is preliminary, but they have to make a formal application before then.
Yeah,
Right?
and that's correct. And what I could do, I mean, if the board, we could do a site walk now with this plan and still walk you based on what our plan is. And that's normally what we do at a site walk, right? We take out
Yeah.
the site plan. We don't necessarily have to walk the entire parcel.
Right.
But we'll stand at a point and say, okay, this is the roadway, 180 degrees down this area. Can do that here, and then we can do it at preliminary, whatever the board prefers.
I think both might be good.
Yeah. What about 2 sidewalks?
Whatever you prefer.
Yeah.
I think for something this big, to get our own heads around what the site is, even though it's going to change and be remediated and flattened and whatever.
Let me see if I can coordinate maybe some golf carts or something like that. I'll try and put that together. We'll throw some dates out there and we'll make something work.
Okay.
Because even if you had to walk it, that's a lot of walking for 25 acres just to get a sense of the land.
Yeah.
And it's not easy terrain. It's rough.
I'm tick repellent, because the last site work I did, I ended up with Lyme disease, so I made pass on this one.
So I'll coordinate something like that and we'll put some dates together.
It sounds like you want to get out there soon, so we can
Yeah, it
take
doesn't have
that.
to be soon. I have no sense of when preliminary is going to begin.
You want to do something like in the next month? What are you
Yeah.
thinking? Like something like that work?
Yeah,
We
before
can,
it gets too hot.
we can coordinate with the applicant
Yeah.
and work on a date that works for everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we expect probably preliminary in the next 3 months. So I walk in the next 30, 45 days makes sense, and then once we file preliminary, we can then schedule something out.
Yeah, good.
Did you say you have an architect here to present some
Yeah,
rendering?
I want to hear from them, sure.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, hello.
You get the digital version up there? Frank Karpowicz, Karpowicz. So that house is 40 feet wide. The floor plan that relates to that is just a little under 2,000 square feet. It's about 1,900 square feet. Like Enrico said, the 2,400 is the biggest house that we built. If somebody wanted a sunroom on the back or a screen porch on the back, there is room on some of the lots to make the house a little deeper. But it's a 2-bedroom, 2-bath house with a nice open kitchen, living, dining in the back, facing the backyard. So
Are you counting the garage as part of that 2,400 square feet or, so it's living space?
Right.
That is big. And are there other rooms in these houses that are, I mean, what kind of rooms are in the houses? There's bedrooms, living room,
Well, there's
kitchen.
a foyer and there's 2 bedrooms, principal suite. The other bedroom has a hall bath next to it. There's a laundry room. There's a small pantry near the kitchen. Mechanical room. There's a basement under some of the houses where they can be easily built, where it makes sense to do a basement. That's about it. Kitchen, living, dining.
Those are big rooms.
Does it count the porch?
Well, if you, it does not include the porch, that square footage.
Yeah, it just seems like a pretty big house. It's only 2 bedrooms.
Well,
so
I mean,
those-
if you think about, the principal suite, everybody who's buying a new house kind of expects that bedroom to be about 16 feet by 14 feet approximately. The bathrooms end up being 150, 200 square feet. You've got a walk-in closet, maybe 2 walk-in closets, so.
Yeah, I know, I'm just trying to figure
You
out
know,
if there's a
it-
library in there or a den or something.
No, that's not gonna work from a building code standpoint. Any room that could be a bedroom, the building official's gonna say that's a bedroom and you don't have a septic system roof.
Right.
So.
Yeah, where's
Yeah.
the good? And, yeah, nice if there's trees and stuff. On these ones where there's communal space, turf grass is not very environmentally useful, but if there can be other, then, and we would need to see a landscaping thing too.
Right, yeah, that's not my department.
No, I know, I'm just saying we would need
Yeah.
to see a landscaping plan.
Landscape design, sure.
Is that a sidewalk? Will there be sidewalks within?
I don't know if the sidewalks are shown on the.
Sure looks like.
It looks
a side-
like it.
At this point, but yeah.
No, I mean, it looks like it here.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's why I included that disclaimer in the bottom left-hand corner.
Is that what that little line is along there?
So this is just a picture taken in another development, or it's a
No,
separate?
no, we designed the house for this,
Okay.
for this lot.
The
Um,
2-car garage.
These lots, yeah. But as, you know, just as the site plan will be developed and you'll see more details and some of the angles and the curves might change a little bit as the septic systems are designed and things like that.
Well,
Those houses are gonna,
will you have a variety of houses?
when you see it, if there's no sidewalk on the site plan, then there won't be a sidewalk in front of the
Well, it
house.
looks like there might be. No, will you have a variety of house types, not just one same or?
I'm sure, we haven't talked about it specifically, but typically a developer with this many houses is gonna have, at least 2 models. And potentially this might be, like a 1,900 square foot house and then a 2,200 square foot house. Somebody who wants a bigger house that house would have to be built on a larger lot that could allow a house that to be a little deeper.
It'd be
So-
nice to see some variety rather than every house looking alike. Yeah.
So they're gonna be built as they're sold, is that how it is?
Um, No, the house looks fine.
Can I
It's
just
just big.
Yeah.
clarify? They would be built as they are sold? But the affordable units would have to be constructed.
Right, per state statute. So as
Okay.
we, as we group them, we're not gonna do one at a time. They're gonna be a series of groups that will be built. And they'll be as they sold, once we finish that segment, then we'll go into the next segment.
Are they, the affordables gonna be intermingled?
They're all gonna be intermixed, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a statute right on point as to how that's supposed to be spread out.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But if there's a mixture of sizes and things for both market rate and LMI, then that would possibly work. Maybe different price points.
The way that's worked in other towns is for every affordable unit you build, you get to build
Mm.
the proportional.
Right. What about any sort of like storage, like shed? I think like Churchwoods, they have a storage unit next to the house, one down in Charlestown. I mean, so that if you have, I don't know, it depends on the condo association, whether they're allowed to have any and do anything with their little piece around them. I mean, here, there's a separation, as if each house is on its own section. Here, they're all
Yeah, so,
common.
so for example, where you see that green, that will not be owned by the homeowner. That's gonna be owned by the association. And so you won't be able to put a shed there or a dog house or anything like that. unless it's provided for in the condo documents. And the maintenance of that will be maintained by the homeowner association or the condominium association.
Mhm. So, so they really can't do anything around their house.
No, they own the walls.
Okay.
Did you have maybe a name of a similar project that you've done somewhere?
Yeah, so, you can look at the one that was done in Gloucester, Rhode Island.
Yeah, I did kind of look, but I didn't really look for your company and I didn't know.
Well, you know, each development's got, so that's under, Overlook LLC,
Overlook and then Bella Vista.
and then Bella Vista. And then, and those were age restricted, 55 and older. And then I've worked on one which is nearby here, and that's called Crompton Meadows.
Crofton,
Crompton Meadows.
Crompton.
Yeah, in East Greenwich, and it's in Coventry. And that is, an affordable housing. That's a comprehensive permit, 80 units, 25% affordable. And, the units, so when that project was proposed, the price point was 325,000. They have one unit for sale now, which is a model unit at $1,850,000.
At which,
$1,850,000.
You're kidding.
The market rate.
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, that's my concern, is that all of this is being done to produce housing. And all these state laws are being done to produce housing, et cetera. So the affordable units, 120%, I used to think was too high. Under the current market, 120% is hard, the price for those is hard to find. So, I see that as more reasonable now. But 75% of these are market rate. And you're describing, the big master suite, et cetera, and that's what people want. The people who want that are at the high end of the market. They're the ones paying a lot for these houses. The whole idea of doing this, both for the affordable units and the other ones, and, you're getting all this density, you're getting an incredible density bonus. And it's just gonna be more of the same selling to the out-of-state buyers because they're the only ones who can afford those prices. I'm not talking the affordable units, the state's controlling the price. The market is controlling the price for the market rate units. But you are building to that higher end market with the large size, again, the big master bedroom, et cetera.
So yes and no. So yeah, they're new units, so they're attractive. But the reason why the prices are as high as they are is because there's no inventory.
no what?
There's no inventory. There's nothing that,
We live within 3 hours of 25 million people here. We have beautiful beaches. We have, incredible recreation. And as horrible, as it is living next to a gravel bank, people still live here. They're not leaving because it is so beautiful. So that's in those 25 million people, there are plenty of multimillionaires who can afford $1 million houses. And they are bidding up the market.
right, but we can't control that.
No.
You can't shut them up.
No, I know.
You are building to that market.
We're building to who the buyers are, whoever comes in and buys it. And unfortunately, that market, as there are more buyers and less inventory, that price goes up. It's basic economics.
No, in a subdivision under the subdivision rules, I understand that. But this is a state law that's supposed to be, helping the housing crisis, both for affordable and the housing that you're building. It's not doing that. So, the neighbors, the environment,
That's an argument for the General Assembly.
I understand that, but you're not required to build to that high-end market. I understand it for the regular subdivision, but it doesn't make sense at this density.
I'm not following you. Maybe this is where the disconnect. So are you asking us to not build a quality product so that we don't attract an out-of-stater?
No,
What's-
you don't have to build a big house.
It can be a
Building
quality
any
product.
Have a quality product that's not as expensive for you to build or expensive for people to buy. And I
Planning
can't
board
tell you what
can't-
to do there. It's just that it's
Can't tell
not,
us to build a 1,100 square foot house or 900 square foot house. And we've already said that the range is gonna be between 1,800 and 2,400, depending on what their amenities are gonna do, sunroof
But-
and the like.
1,500 for a 2-bedroom house seems more in scale with Charlestown. Again, we can't tell you what to do. It's just that you can't say that this is solving the state's housing problem when the only buyers that can afford this are out-of-state buyers.
So we're not here to solve the state housing crisis. That's not on not the burden of this property owner. It's not one project. It's a law that's in place.
Yeah.
And as long as we meet the obligations of the law, and which we will, remember, the public well, the well and the septics that are gonna be designed here are completely different than what you normally see in a subdivision. These are not, $1,500 wells. These are gonna be commercial public wells, and they're gonna be commercial septic systems. They're gonna go through a very detailed and exhaustive approval process with DM and with DOH, and then they're gonna come back here. So this is gonna be designed to all the standards required of us to do so, otherwise we won't get the permits and we won't be able to build it.
No,
Why would we do that?
no, I understand all that. I'm just saying that we can't make the claim that this is solving the state's housing.
I'm not,
Well,
so the record's clear.
yeah.
We're not here to solve the state's problems. We're not here to solve affordable housing. We're not here to solve housing crisis. What we're here to do is follow the law and how we can repurpose this parcel that has to be and will be developed. And the question is how do we do that? And we put our planner's hat on and we decide the best way that we can meet both the intent of your comprehensive plan and the letter of the law.
Madam Chair,
No.
I just have, it feels like we're
Yeah.
reaching the conclusion. I just want to come back to two pieces of feedback that the board has already provided and just make sure that I understand and that the applicant understands what the board is asking. Earlier, you mentioned that multifamily developments require a 100-foot buffer from project, from the property lines. And you mentioned that the zoning department classifies condominium developments as multifamily. That was one of the things that I thought might be an issue for this project with the 100-foot buffers. Obviously, there's no distances on these plans, but it does appear that some of the septic and even some of the houses are probably within 100 feet. So I just want to make sure that the applicant is aware of that requirement in our ordinances.
Yeah, so I think we can meet that, and if we don't, then we'll seek a dimensional variance. We'll seek a variance for it. So we'll identify at preliminary what relief we need if we need any. Right now, we don't believe we need any, but if we don't meet the 100-foot on some sections of the property, then we'll seek that variance. And as you know, as part of the comprehensive permit process, that variance is done by the planning board, and the threshold or the elements for that have been diminished by the state statute. So it's governed by the statute and not by your zoning code.
But your development is impacting the abutting properties. And I think you should try to meet that 100-foot buffer. That.
Well, again, under the standard, right, it's the least relief necessary.
Yeah.
So we may be off by 5 feet, we may be off by 50 feet. I don't know, we may be off by 0. We may meet it. So the point is if we don't meet it, we will identify that and we will seek the appropriate relief for it.
We don't have.
Yeah, I was just trying to emphasize that we would like you to meet it.
Yeah, I know.
To give the neighbors as much buffer as possible.
You can't deny us because we don't meet it, that's what I'm saying. So if you're looking for a vehicle to deny it, that ain't it.
No, I know. And you could always move them anyway. And, the
exactly.
houses can get a
I
little
could
closer
shift it
together.
over to the left, I could make
But-
it
but
smaller.
looking-
There's a lot of things we can do.
We're looking for.
We will attempt to meet it if we can. If we can't, then
We're looking for something that fits in Charlestown, that is environmentally sensitive, and that, and that obviously meets state law, which we have nothing whatsoever to do with. So, we're just trying to make the best less of a bad bargain, if you like. So I know you know.
I have one, the other one, it seemed like the applicant may have, not been aware or disagreed that, the access road to the recreation resources on the northern part, traverses across a neighbor's property, is not front on Ross Hill Road. The survey that was submitted shows, the lot lines pretty clearly for lot 211, occupy all that frontage in that area, and that access road would have to go across that parcel. So I just want to make sure that we all understand that would likely need to be addressed at the next stage.
Yeah, so we have a roadway there now. So we'll look at that and see what that issue is. But yeah, I agree, that'll be addressed. And if there's an issue, we'll change up the access, but we've been using that road pretty.
I don't know what the situation is,
Yeah.
but
David?
just based on what's here. That's all I have. Thank you.
Oh, one last thing. And if this sort of plan does go into existence, I would ask that there be a reasonable buffer at the very front entrance so that you're not looking straight into all of it that, we usually,
Yeah.
I mean, at least vegetated or not cut down and gives a buffer from the road so that, at least from the road point of view, you're not looking into it in the same way.
Another thing, you need to identify areas of bedrock within 4 feet of the surface. And any blasting or removal of bedrock, that kind of thing. We generally don't want any, but I mean, it's already going on, I understand, but as part of the subdivision, there shouldn't be a lot of blasting needs.
Can I answer that question, please?
So, but just if you identify any bedrock within 4 feet of the surface.
So I was gonna say, yeah, like we'll identify that and we do the test bits, but I don't have x-ray vision, so
Right.
when we go to run utilities and maybe put some foundations, I'm not gonna know that until we hit it. So part of doing the development, we might have to do some drilling and blasting. It's gonna be out of my hands.
Right, but we want it to be avoided as much as
Oh,
possible.
I understand, but again, we're not gonna know until we get to that point. But when we do our test pitting, we will be able
Yeah.
to identify what's there on the plan.
Right.
Well, you're going to have to do test bits for most of the wells, aren't you?
Well, not the
there's only
wells, the
3 wells.
No,
septic.
just septics, I mean, yeah,
Okay.
you have to be able to do that.
I'm just going through some things that
Yeah.
had been,
Can I-
and at the end of the TRC meeting, there was a list of things that they wanted for the next meeting. Okay. So is there anything else from members of the planning commission?
And only one last thing that just to bear in mind that what was the public was saying about Healy Brook being, drying up, etc., and you're placing a public well right by it. That might be something we would really need to look into as to whether that is going to impact Healy Brook and the wells around, because it just seems to be a little. And same with the other one, which is by the wetland. How much whether you can go through it, but to get a line, or also how much it might impact the wetland to have a public well pulling that much water from an area like that.
But also if you move those public health wells, the wetland that you're in, part of it is on another property owner. So if you move those wellhead protection areas out of the abutting property owner's area, if you move, I'm getting tired. If you move those wellhead protection areas into your property, you move them away a little bit from the brook and from those wetlands. And the only area that gets disturbed there is the wellhead. The wellhead protection area shouldn't get disturbed. except, the road in.
It's already disturbed.
Uh,
So normally the single family look in Charlestown is houses set on their own lot with landscaping and buffers. And this is an entirely different sort of subdivision. So it just takes a while for us to get our heads around these things. It's a bit like the one in South Kingstown off Gravelly Road. I mean, it has the same sort of, except they have little bits of garden they can do. Okay.
You got it all?
Well,
No, go ahead.
no, I don't know. I think so.
All right, so anything else? Okay, anything else? Sean, do you have anything else?
No, just those last two items was all I had.
Okay.
The board's concerned.
All right, so again, if you have any comments or questions that come up, just send them to Sean. And if you had notes from tonight, you might send them to Sean, of things. Sure, you go ahead.
Just a fire. What's your name? My name is Deborah Davis. I'm at 179 Ross Hill Road. You had mentioned that you have done developments like this with well and septic. Now, you also mentioned that you've done Overlook LLC in Gloucester. Was that well and septic?
Yes. Overlook Bridge.
Okay, what about Bella Vista? Is that also in Gloucester?
That's in Gloucester as well, yeah.
And that's well and septic?
Yes.
What about Compton Meadows?
That's public water and sewer.
Okay, any others that have well and septic?
That's it.
Okay, how did those come out? My biggest concern is water. And I've noticed many of my fellow people here on Rockland Road have that same concern as water. So have these two developments that you've built with water and septic had any issues? So when I research this, I'm not gonna find any issues.
Is there any other member of the public who wants to speak before we move on?
You won't go if you want.
Okay, and again, the public also can send any comments to Sean, and they'll get shared with the commission. If the developer has, well, you'll be talking to Sean probably.
They had said that they intend to submit preliminary within the next several months.
Right.
And that we're hoping to get a site visit together within the next 30 to 45 days.
Yeah.
So that'll be sort of the next step for us.
Okay.
Do you feel you've got the information you needed?
Oh, yeah.
Or not that you want, but that you needed?
No, absolutely, yeah. And be mindful, I mean, we understand this is a difficult process, a long process, and we're willing to work with you and give you whatever information you and the abutters need to be comfortable. I mean, at the end of the day, we want to ensure that this works for both of us. There's going to be significant amount of investment into this parcel. And this is, as like I said, it's not our first rodeo, so we understand the pitfall of these types of developments, and our goal is to avoid that. And the pitfalls are utilities, proper construction, proper management, proper maintenance, and that's all part of what we do to do successful developments. It's a local company, and we're going to be in town, and it's going to be a 3-year process. Not a one and done type of thing.
Did you say underground?
Yeah, underground utilities.
Underground.
They have to be.
Yeah, so underground utilities are required in Charlestown. Okay.
And, there it said a propane tank or something? I thought somewhere said a propane tank.
Yeah, it's okay, yeah.
Are those underground or?
No.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
Underground?
Yeah, those
oh, those are underground?
Okay. Just ask.
A gallon and they feed, I think it's 4 units, 4 buildings.
How do you, I mean, one person, you're doing a lot? Oh, okay.
We're doing an overlook as well.
Yeah, we did it.
Mhm. Okay, so last chance here
Well, last chance for tonight.
for tonight.
Yeah, no, I think.
Okay,
My questions have been answered, thank you.
okay.
Mhm.
All right, so,
Anybody else?
that's it for tonight. Hopefully, hopefully there are no misunderstandings.
No, we're good.
Well, we thought so before.
So do you